Well, Bay YouTube, it's Charles here, and you guys seem to like the videos where I just kind of go through some of my comic books and talk a little bit. Right now, I'm going through the process of cataloging a lot of books a friend recently gave to me. My buddy Steve was a big collector in the 90s and wanted to put his collection in somebody that would appreciate it. So, I got two long boxes worth of comic books that I'm going through, separating them out, bagging what needs to be bagged, and just seeing what I have and sharing it with you guys. And while I do this, I talk a little bit about myself and listening to some music. I'm listening to Brian Bromberg right now. He is a brilliant bassist. Here we go, get the light on there. But yeah, brilliant upright bassist. Actually, when I was in college, he was the first bassist that really stood out to me, and I was kind of trying to decide, okay, do I want to be a guitarist or do I want to be a bass player? And then I heard the Stan Getz album. It was called Live from the Sea of Cans, but the new version that's available on streaming is called Live from. I can't remember what it's called, but if you look for a live album, late '70s, Stan Getz, Autumn Leaves, that track made me want to be a bass player. And just hearing what he did on that album, and so yeah, it's Brian Bromberg, and he's the reason why I am a bassist primarily to this day. Um, so let's get into it. Got some Image comics here, and it's cool for me to get these old books because I'm a relatively new collector. And so back when these came out, you know, collecting comic books wasn't even something that I considered. But we have Wildcats, Chapter 1, Number 6. This is from 1993, but it is in immaculate quality. There's some slight bending, but this looks like it was just purchased the other day, which is remarkable considering that it's not bagged or boarded. I can tell I'm already going to love this series. A lot of action, movement. Check out this panel right here. I am not familiar with the Wildcats franchise, but I am about to be because just from a quick scan of what's going on in here, I'm a big fan already. I almost want to stop recording and bagging and read this issue, but now we're going to do one thing at a time here and get a little bit organized and get to the reading. So yeah, this is Wildcats, Killer Instinct Chapter 1 from 1993 Image Comics. Okay, and this is Wildcats number 13. Look at this cover. Again, the book is in tremendous shape, especially considering that it hasn't been bagged or boarded, and it's been sitting in a long box for over 30 years. I mean, the art in this thing is just dynamic. We got some of these big multi-page panels that I absolutely love from Image Comics. It's written by Chris Claremont, the penciler is Jim Lee, the inker is Scott Williams. Did a tremendous job here. And the bags I'm using are actually BCW comic bags. I got these at Walmart.com for a little bit, right around 10 bucks. You get 100 bags with each, purchase, so that's 10 cents a bag. That's a good deal right there. And bagging is important, to keep your comic books away from moisture, wear and tear. Boards are a good idea too, but me personally, I can go without boards. It's just I want everything in my collection to be at least bagged. But fortunately, most comic book shops and even like online retailers like Midtown Comics or Coffee and a Comic, they will provide bags and boards at no additional cost. It's just something standard. Yeah, Wildcats number 14. So we're getting some sequential issues here. Another one in great shape. Yeah, like I mentioned in the beginning, outside of comic books, I am a musician. I studied classical guitar and jazz guitar, jazz bass, and played drums for my college big band. And I thought I was going to be a jazz musician when I was an old man. Got Wildcats number 15, Image Comics. And I mean, I guess that's true. I play locally in my community. I have a jazz trio that plays every so often, not so much since the pandemic. It's been kind of hit or miss and getting back out there. But any chance I get to play jazz, I love it. I also played in a funk band, play in a rock band. We do classic rock, a bunch of Steely Dan stuff. Which, I mean, if you're a jazz musician that's, playing in a rock band, Steely Dan is like the best of both worlds. It has that rock feel and appeal. Wildcats number 16. Are we still going sequentially here? But you have that rock appeal and danceability. Yeah, we are going sequentially here. Another great looking book. But you have the complicated chord structures and improvisational aspect of jazz. So that's a fun project that I was involved in. And then here recently, I just do a lot of recording at home. If you watch my daily videos, every piece of music that you hear on my daily videos is done by me. Mainly because I don't know how to get around the copyright structure on YouTube. So I figure I'm a musician. I have a bunch of instruments I can play, so I record my own music. The theme, the Let's Talk About Comics theme that I use for the introduction of my comic books, that's my first attempt at jingle writing, keeping it simple and catchy, and that was fun, a little fun musical experiment. Wildcats number 17. And then the song that closes out most of my videos, the jazz song, is called Dear Old Stockholm, and that was a fun one for me. I played that tune with friends before, in a trio with guitar, bass, and drums, and it's one of my favorite tunes to play, and I was like, well, I just want to record my own version, and I did some fun stuff with it. I did guitar, electric bass, drums, and I even played keyboard on it, which is one of my weaker instruments. But I had a real nice electric piano sound that blended perfectly with guitar and kind of masked my lack of ability on keyboard. And so when you listen to it, it sounds like I'm somewhat competent, but I'm not. I was barely holding on by the seat of my pants when I was trying to record that keyboard part. It was a hard one to get through for me. We got Wildcats number 18. And check out the ad on the back. It is for the video game of Arnold Schwarzenegger's True Lies. That's pretty cool. And then I also did the theme for my unboxings, my action figure unboxings. There's a song I called Plastic Addict, and it's more of a funk song. And I have another channel that I don't put too much time in, but when I record stuff, be it jazz covers or originals, I'll put it on there. It's Old Nerd Wyoming Plays Music. Right. So yeah, you can find a few songs on there, and I have a bunch of stuff on my personal channel, but I don't really have it organized, so I don't direct people to that channel too much. That's more of a storage thing for me. Wildcats, number 19. But when the pandemic shut down the local music scene, two things happened. First thing that happened was, that week I had 2 gigs cancel on me, and being disabled, it was the only work I could get, and and that was a hard blow for me when I became disabled, because I was a workaholic and a hard worker, and I got turned down for job after job after job because I can't stand for long periods of time. I can't carry heavy things around. I mean, I have so many limitations, and I thought that I would at least have something to add somewhere. And the only other work I did was music, and so I did that as much as I could, which wasn't a lot because of my physical limitations, but it was, it was a way to get out and make a little extra money. We got Wildcats, number 20. This is Wildstorm Rising, Part 2 from Image Comics. But yeah, the week everything shut down, I lost 2 gigs that week. I was excited to get that extra comic book money from 2 gigs, and then when things opened back up, I played sporadically here and there. But my body wasn't accustomed to playing normal. I got to a point where I could play 2 to 4 gigs a month. The Wildcats, number 21. But I could play 2 to 3 gigs a month, 2 to 4 gigs a month. But when the pandemic shut down and my sedentary lifestyle became much more sedentary, I didn't have the physical ability to rehearse and gig on the same basis I did. And the main band that was working, the rock band, the guy, he's in his 60s. Doesn't seem like it though. He moves around better than I do, and you watch him perform, you wouldn't think. I'm still surprised whenever he reminds me how old he is. But yeah, he got out of the habit of wanting to book gigs and set up and all equipment, and so I think I played 2 to 3 gigs with him since then. So yeah, with the band that I played the Steely Dan stuff with, Wildcats number 22, we did a couple of gigs since then, and then I played maybe 2 jazz gigs since then, because I don't like calling around and booking stuff and negotiating prices. So mainly since 2020, it's just been multi-track recording. I've actually recorded, there we go, number 23. The first big project I did was a full reggae album. That I recorded it, I liked it, I got it mixed, but I don't know, I kind of stopped with with publishing. I think I'm being too hypercritical. I feel like every time I listen to it, there's something I want to add or subtract or change or re-record. But I have a full album's worth of reggae tunes, originals written by me, that I could publish. I'm just very self-conscious. But if I ever do publish it, it will obviously not be as trendy because it's an old project by now. But I will let you guys know where you can hear it if I ever push a button on that. But mainly now I just record jazz covers by myself, and I've written a few new jazz tunes myself. So we're at Wildcats, number 24. Steve was really big in Image Comics back in the 90s apparently. Which is great because It's a lot of the same stuff that I'm into. And then one thing I noticed too is the condition of these books is a lot different. Here we go. Here's Wildcats 25. He actually has this one bagged and boarded, and it's a little bit thicker, and it's a foil cover. So that looks like it might be a little bit more valuable. Has a $4.95 price tag on it, and back then that would have been very pricey for a comic book. So let's get it out of the sleeve. Take a look at it. Yeah, we got the foil cover. It actually goes to the back cover here. But yeah, I haven't really put too much thought into that reggae project. I probably should, like I said, just finish it and put it out there because I did the work on it. Wildcats number 26. But then again, at my age too, I don't really have aspirations of being a music star. You know, I ever since my early 30s, I have been content with just being a local musician, which to me is even more important because while let me tell you this story to tell you my thoughts on being a local musician. Here we go. We have another series. This is called Zealot. It's also from Image Comics, and it's a #1 issue. Yeah, you can tell Steve really treasured these books from the condition they're in. Especially considering not bagged and boarded. These were handled with great care. But back maybe 12 years ago, I was playing with my jazz trio. Actually, we were a quartet at the time. We had a trumpet player that would play with us. I found out he passed a couple years ago, but a brilliant trumpet player. And we were playing this street festival. Let's see if I can find out a little bit what's going on. And this lady came up, and she said, "You are the best bass player I've ever heard." And my response was kind of like, I nodded and I said thank you, because one thing about being a musician is you're not there for your ego or yourself, you're there for the people. So if that's what she felt like saying, I wasn't going to correct her. Zealot, #2 from Image Comics. But then I thought about what she said when she said that I'm the best bass player she ever heard, because I'm not a virtuoso. I am very good, but I wouldn't consider myself great. But then I realized what she was saying was, you know, she hasn't had the opportunity to see too many live basses. And somebody at my skill level, it was a treat for her to hear. And so, you know, it wasn't something that blew my ego up, but at the same time, it was like, if I were to discourage her, that would be cheapening her experience. If I brought joy to her and my bass playing brought that much joy to her, then who am I to argue with her? So I will be the best bass player that they've ever seen happily, because it's not about me or how I feel or what I think of my ability, but the people that show up to hear you play. And so when it comes to local music, this is Zealot #3. And this is an interesting cover. She is in a military uniform, and it looks like she is invading a fascist headquarters. You can see the fascist symbol that she is fighting in front of, and the people that she is fighting against. I'm not going to name that because I don't want to get in trouble on YouTube, but you guys see it. So we can safely assume that Zealot is a very good person. I'm excited to see what that comic is all about. So yeah, I feel like when I go out and play music, I'm giving people an experience that they may not be able to afford to hear. Especially in my smaller town, we don't get a lot of big names to come through here. We don't get a lot of quality concert experiences. So I get to provide that to people. And so I love being a local musician, an unknown musician, because, I'm feeling a very important part of the ecosystem. So we have another series, Team 1 Wildcats from Image Comics. And then we have Team 1 Wildcats number 2. So if I'm not mistaken, that Wildcats, this series, and possibly Zealot seem to be connected, possibly. But these books are in a lot better condition than the Marvel books I received in the same packaging. Okay. Team 1, Stormwatch. Okay, so Team 1 is another franchise apparently. This is a #1 issue. Okay, and then we have Team 1 Stormwatch number 2 from Image Comics. But yeah, if you're wondering, I did actually start playing bass on the upright bass, the big upright bass, and then I taught myself electric bass, combining my upright bass instruction with my classical guitar instruction, using classical guitar rest strokes with my right hand and bass fingerings in my left. Okay, yeah, Wildstorm Rising, Chapter 7, Wet Works, from Image Comics. This is number 8. The condition is a little bit more beat up than the others. It's from 1995, but it's not bad. You have some bending in it. There are no tears. And I did not keep up with classical guitar after college. I still enjoy classical music, but I didn't enjoy playing it on guitar so much. Nothing wrong with that though. It's different strokes for different folks. And I still appreciate quality classical guitar playing. Okay, and we have this right here. This is Generation X, Gen 13 from Marvel Comics. It is in a bag with a board. I actually, in the previous video, we had a Generation X book. I think it was from 1999. This one is from trying to find a year here, 1997. Yeah, it's in good condition. Yeah, I noticed a lot of the comics from this time period that at least Steve was collecting, they all have these real big, bright, bloomy covers and exaggerated body dimensions. Like, everybody has massive shoulders, tiny waist. Everything is just exaggerated. It's almost too much. We got Youngblood, Team Youngblood, number 3 from Image Comics. yeah, we talked about my music, and another person commented about being able to relate to me being disabled, and I actually got disabled late in life. It was after, let's see, Team Youngblood, Riptide Exposed, number 14, Image Comics, and you have a WWF Raw is War video game advertisement in the back. Yeah, I got injured at around 29, 30 years old. I was working at a convenience store, and it was a real frustrating time in my life because I'd gotten through my 20s. I struggled with alcohol addiction, and in my late 20s, I ended up being able to quit alcohol through a friend of mine that invited me to church and got me involved in playing music at church. Youngblood, number 15. And I was able to get off the alcohol, and the first job I got, because I had bounced job to job during my addiction, the first job I got was at a church directing a youth music program, which I did for a couple of years, and I credit to help me maintain my sobriety. Youngblood, or Team Youngblood, number 16, Image Comics, great condition. But after a couple of years, after the initial group of kids I taught moved on, it was around 2008, 2009, right around that little what was it? Like a little depression, that financial situation, the financial crash of 2008. Oh, and there's a playing card hidden in this book. Some kind of card, collectible. And Scott Liefeld art on it. Look at that. A character named Sentinel. But yeah, when the market crashed, people didn't want to pay for their kids to have private lessons. And I was working at a church that didn't have a lot of contemporary music instrumentation. It was a Methodist church, and they wanted a contemporary band. And I was able to teach the kids drums, bass, guitar. We had a lot of pianists, but they weren't used to reading charts. They were used to having everything notated, note for note. And so I taught them how to read chord charts and how to play and improvise on chord charts. But it seemed like when the private lessons that I was given, when those dried up because of the financial situation, we didn't have as many kids to fill the contemporary band. And it got to a point to where it was like I was working with 2 or 3 kids trying to put something together, and it had run its course. And so I got back into the regular job market, and I went back to a convenience store working, and I was doing great, getting raises, all kinds of good stuff, and a freak accident loading up soda in the cooler ended up trashing my knee. I had a botched surgery, which made the damage worse and created arthritis. And I also did surgeries based on a misdiagnosis. And I went through years of misdiagnosis and a lot of rehabilitation that wasn't fixing anything. And by the time I got to a very quality orthopedist, got Team Youngblood, number 18, the damage was far too great for them to fix. And so they told me that I was going to be disabled for the rest of my life. And I really struggled with that. I was in denial at first. Team Youngblood, number 19. And, I really beat myself up about it because I had a lot of misconceptions about the disabled and people who weren't able to work, and going through the frustration of applying for jobs that I used to scoff at and not even getting a call back or anything. It really it really affected me in a negative way. And I challenged, I had to find something to do with all the time I had. And so I got into collecting, first, movies. I really got into movies. And classic movies, classic TV shows, and catching up on a lot of media that I missed out on during the time that I was either A, partying, or, the time I spent in college running around doing 14 credit hours and a full-time job. And so it was time for me to catch up. This is an interesting book. It's number 0. It's called Glory, and it is also from Image Comics. So I spent my time catching up on media and collecting media. You can see I have a very extensive DVD, Blu-ray collection. But eventually that just it got a little bit repetitive and boring to me. Then we have number 3 of Glory, that same series. And I ended up discovering action figure collecting through my love of professional wrestling. I was in a, GameStop. And I was purchasing one of the Xbox Ones, Glory, number 6. Looks like a female warrior character. I like the aesthetic. It's almost a little bit Vampirella type of vibe going on. But again, you see the cover, we have the big exaggerated features, big shoulders, huge waist, or huge hips, tiny waist, everything is exaggerated, and just style time, bright colors. We got Glory, number 7. Here she has more of a Wonder Woman vibe. A lot more distinguished, dare I say elegant look, as opposed to the tawdry look of the previous cover. And this is bagged and boarded. Yeah, we have her kind of busting through the front cover here with her in the background and another character. So, I would not be surprised if this wasn't based on a Wonder Woman cover. We have number 8 of Glory, Babe Watch. So far we've been all Image Comics except for Generation X, Gen 13. And that is an Image Marvel crossover. I didn't know that, but yeah, that's what that is. We have Glory. This is the Glory and Friends Christmas Special, number 1. One little one shot there. And then we have Brigade, featuring Glory. So I'm assuming Brigade is this character right back here with the huge gun. We got Glory in the front here. And then we have Supreme, number 28, guest starring Glory, Santa Fe here. So yeah, I was getting my Xbox One from GameStop, and my nephew was with me, and he said, "Hey Charles, look at this." He pulled out a Brock Lesnar action figure from the discount bin, and I jokingly said, "Oh, it's just a bunch of nerd stuff." And I said, "Let me see that." And I saw the action figure and the price, it was $14. I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna buy this one, and this only one action figure. You can see what that has led to. Like, this is just one of my displays. I got a display right there, 2 displays directly across from me, a few boxes of action figures to display in my bedroom, and I have no regrets. I love collecting action figures. And we have another title. This is Cybernary from Image Comics. Looks like a female character. So that's how I got into action figures. And then, you know, with action figure collecting, for me, it's not about the purchasing, it's about the hunting. And when I get stressed out or bummed out, I would go on action figure hunts. Driving around store to store, seeing what was available. And I noticed that there was a new store in my neighborhood, Cybernary #2, in immaculate condition. Shiny color and everything. But yeah, I noticed there was a new store in my neighborhood that had a bunch of toys in the display window, and it ended up being a Funko Pop display, but that was all they had for toys. It was a comic book store. Then we have Freak Force featuring Vanguard. This is #4 from Image Comics. And so I walked into the store and the people were so friendly. The store wasn't even open yet. They were just getting it set up, but they welcomed me. Freak Force #16. Great condition. But they invited me in, introduced themselves, let me kick it with them for a little bit. And I would go in and, you know, shoot the breeze and hang out there and pick up a comic here and there. And that is how I got in comic books. It became my primary hobby. And I still collect action figures, still love them, but not nearly as much as the comic books. Next Thursday, November 13th, it's my birthday, I'll be doing 2 action figure unboxings of action figures that I have really been wanting to find. One of which I didn't think I would ever be able to find because it's a 1 of 5,000 chase, and the other is a very new action figure that I didn't think it'd be in my price range for a while. So we have this Cyber Force, codename Strike Force, Opposing Forces #1. I do know Cyber Force. I enjoy Cyber Force. Finally a property I'm familiar with. Now, if you're wondering about this particular LaFaro or this particular Brian Bromberg album, it's called Brian Bromberg LaFaro. It is an album. This is Cyber Force, codename Strike Force, Opposing Forces #2. But Scott LaFaro was a brilliant bassist that played with the Bill Evans trio. Cyber Force #9. Love me some Cyber Force. And unfortunately, Scott LaFaro died young in a car accident, I believe. But as far as jazz bass playing goes, he was revolutionary. He had a style whereas before, jazz bass was all about being in the background. And while it was reactionary to the improviser, our main job was to be that stable low end and to really almost be like a good ref or umpire. You don't want to be noticed. You just want to do your job, stay in the background, and support the soloist. But what Bill Evans and Scott LaFaro revolutionized was, while Bill Evans was soloing, Scott was interplaying with him in a lot of higher register stuff, doubling his improvised lines, doing a lot of call and response between the piano and the bass, and doing a lot of what a lot of traditionalists wouldn't consider the bassist's job. He made the bass like a lead instrument. And he was inspiring, obviously, to Brian Bromberg, because Bromberg, the recording I mentioned at the beginning of the video of him playing with Stan Getz, it was a lot of the same stuff, a lot of high register stuff, and a lot of ghost notes, and really hitting those off beats, but doing it, how can like really aggressively, almost playing it percussively, which really drives the groove along. And unlike a lot of bass players at the time, he wasn't using a bass heavy sound. He had a lot of gain and a lot of treble, and the low end was a little bit lower, which created a tone that stood out more than a traditional bass roll. And when I heard that, especially that walking bass line from Autumn Leaves, it was like, I was like, holy crap, the bass can be that, the bass can do that. I want to do that. And that's when I decided, you know what? I'm studying classical guitar. I don't like classical guitar. I'm studying jazz guitar, and I don't have the chops to play super fast and to impress. You know, I was butting heads a lot with my guitar teacher, but the bass, the instrument that, you know, guitar got me my scholarship, and bass was just, you know, my secondary thing. But I fell in love with it. My bass lessons were going great. I loved every group I played bass in, and I was progressing a lot faster. And so that's what really made me a bassist that plays guitar, as opposed to a guitarist that plays bass. And yes, there are two completely different instruments, two completely different techniques. Like I said, when I learned how to play electric bass, that's even another instrument from the upright bass, because while the left hand is very much the same, the right hand technique, whereas on upright bass you're playing more from this angle, on electric bass you're playing more of a straight on angle like guitar. And so instead of using, you know, bass pizzicato, when I switched to electric bass, I used bass fingers in my left hand and guitar rest strokes in my right hand. Rest strokes and thumb strokes. Let's see here. Next we have Cyber Force, number 10. But yeah, this album is a tribute to Scott LaFaro. Cyber Force number 11, in a bag with a board. So this album is like super cool because it's a bass player I really, really look up to that, you know, it's a tribute album to another bass player I really, really look up to. Cyber Force number 15. Cyber Force number 17. I really like this cover right here. Get a good look at that. But yeah, through collecting comic books, reading comic books, collecting action figures, playing music, all of these things, you know, have become a very important part of my mental health routine, being disabled. See, Regulators, number 1. This is from Image Comics. Let's get this out of the sleeve and take a look at it. And that's why I do this channel, because I know that when I became disabled, I felt a very big sense of loneliness. I felt like, why me? Why am I going through this? Am I a freak? Am I the only person going through this? Why can't I walk off this injury like I've walked off everything else? And when I got online, I saw people living with disabilities and experiencing similar things to what I'd experienced. It made me feel better. You know, things like I would see people making videos like I do, and occasionally you might see a pill bottle in my background. And while I'm not advocating for it, the reason why if I have a pill bottle in my background, I'm not going to move it, is because that's normal. I have another friend who makes content, brilliant content, and they talk about how you have to use, you know, they like to put in their denture or something because they go through a lot of similar issues like I do with their teeth from multiple medications that dry out the teeth and it creates a lot of breakage. And so when I make videos, I don't highlight my many broken teeth, but I don't hide them because it's a very real part of being disabled and having multiple medical conditions. And the fact of the matter is, despite everything I've been through, and I'm turning 47 next week, I am still here. I am still okay. I may not be able to walk as much or as easy, or even if I want to. My mobility varies from bad to impossible, but I'm still here, and I've been able to develop a lot of coping mechanisms from reading comics to making these videos to connect with you guys to, despite being overweight. When I first got injured, I ballooned up to nearly, my highest recorded weight was 398, but I could swear I was over 400 at one time. Huge. And for the last 4 or 5 years, I've had a workout routine that I do 6 days a week. 6 days a week, I do about hour and a half, 2 hours of dumbbells a day. And I've recently been able to get about an average of 50 minutes of bike pedaling a day. I can do at least 40 on my worst days, and I actually got up over an hour the other day. But I like to share this stuff with you guys to let you know that you may be going through something that feels impossible, but it doesn't have to beat you down, and it doesn't have to keep you down. Regulators, number 2 from Image Comics. And one thing I saw a lot of in these spaces with people talking about disability is, and again, this isn't an insult to these creators because they're very inspiring and they inspired me. But there was one disabled creator who was a bodybuilder, and you wouldn't be able to tell he was disabled by looking at him. Dude was ripped and jacked, and all of his stuff was very polished and put together, and he had a support system and finances that I didn't have. And so while it was inspiring, it wasn't relatable to me. A couple of other ladies, one of them is a disabled model, and she does everything from disability advocacy model work to regular modeling, and her mobility is like mine. It goes from impossible to okay on certain days. And she does a lot of cosplays, and you get she actually dressed up her riding chair for a Comic Con as part of her costume. And so seeing stuff like that was very cool, but I don't have model looks, and I definitely don't have a bunch of money. And so I wanted to see somebody that looked like me, they didn't have a lot of finances, probably living by yourself, probably a fat man with broken teeth, but we're out here, and we're surviving. And like I said, I think it's great and inspiring to see people really succeed and really, with the finances and everything like that, and looking good and all that. But that ain't life for most disabled people. A lot of folks live like I do. Some folks live worse than I do, which is a damn shame. We need to take care of the disabled more and give disabled people an opportunity to rise in life. This is Stormwatch, number 20, from Image Comics. I'm not trying to get on a soapbox, but, with being disabled, I have a friend who's very clearly disabled and deals with constant pain. But because she has a live-in partner that has an okay income, she can't receive disability benefits, even though she has well-documented disability history. But because her partner works, she can't get the additional help that she needs. And so unfortunately a lot of her week is spent fighting through pain, hurting herself, and being miserable just to provide. And, you know, certain rules like we can't have a certain amount in our bank account, or else we can get penalized for that. And so, you know, one harsh thing about disability is that it really puts you in a financial and sedentary state. Storm Watch, Wildstorm Rising, Chapter 9. This is number 22. That's number 20. Bagged and Boarded. Storm Watch, number 23. Bagged and Boarded. Yeah, so it looks like we're doing a whole stack of Image. All except for that Image Marvel crossover. Black and White, number 1. Explosive first issue that will give Justice a whole new meaning. This is from 1994. Immaculate Condition. I read this tonight. And we have Wildstorm, Storm Rising, Chapter 1, number 1, Bagged and Boarded. And then we have Blood Wolf, Summer Special, number 1, from Image Comics. Prophet, number 1, Babe Watch Special. I recognize the name Prophet. And then we have Grifter and Bad Rock, number 1, from Image Comics. So we got all the ones that weren't bagged and boarded. I don't know how often I'm gonna do these type of videos. It's not gonna be like it's not gonna interfere with my regular content. Still gonna do regular unboxings, comic book reviews, new comic book day content. But these will just be little extra videos I put up from time to time. Talk with you guys, get this organized a little bit, share the love of comics, and talk about Charles for a little bit. Let you get to know me, the man behind the channel, and you know, it's a little bit of conversation. I've gotten a lot of good responses. This is gonna be my 4th video like this I've done. And you got, you know, a couple of folks who said you guys dig it. So, you know, I gotta get these things bagged up and organized, so I might as well do it with you guys. So thank you very much. Let's see, do a review here of my highlights. I tried to get them separated out, so. Oh, and these are still newer books. Some of the Silent Mission books I've gotten I need to read. G.I. Joe Silent Missions, Spirit Iron Knife, and we got Jinx, and we got Roadblock. So yeah, some of the highlights here, definitely Cyber Force. That's 9. Okay, then we got Cyber Force number 10. There we go, 11. So yeah, definitely Cyber Force. This Black and White has me intrigued. That's going to go toward the front of the read pile. And then what do we got here? So many books. Okay, yeah, Glory. This looks interesting. This is going to go toward the front of the read pile. And then what do we got here? Zelek. Definitely. looks like a female samurai type character, you know, once you're getting all these together. And then the one with her fighting the fascists. So I am very excited to get into that series. And we got a bunch of Wildcats. A lot of those. And then we got Team 1 Stormwatch here. And then this Generation X, Gen 13 Marvel crossover. And that's going on the front of the read pile. And we got Wildstorm Rising, What Works. Now let me see if I can get this guy here. Here we go. And we got Team Youngblood. Now this is interesting because Image Comics just this week put out a new Rob Liefeld Youngblood series. And when I put in my order for next week, I considered getting it, but I didn't quite pull the trigger on it. I will read some of these. I got some more Youngblood issues in the 2 long boxes. So I'll get familiar with the original series before I get into this new one. I'll see you guys next time. Keep reading them books. You know I will. I'm out.